I can't read numbers. Upstairs at Froelich, show 416, reel 1.
I saw Back to School in the movies. Did you?
No. 1986.
No, you
what do
did
you
not,
think?
obviously.
What do you think?
No, it's yeah. No, I went to see this in the theater, and I saw it several times more. I still remain fuzzy on Rodney Dangerfield's desire to go back to school. Did he go back?
Well, you don't remember because
to escape from his horrible wife, played by Adrienne Barbeau,
No,
who's screwing Robert Picardo in the kitchen.
He had already divorced her at that point. No, the whole reason he went is because his kid was having troubles in school. Like his kid was he was lying. The kid was lying to his dad, saying he was on the diving team when he wasn't. His grades were slipping, and then that's when he gets the brilliant idea to go back to school.
Oh, so it's like a.
But then it's even funnier when he just says, "It's like you have no high school transcripts. How are you going to join us?" And then he donates a building.
He donates and then
donates a freaking.
He's a dropout. He's basically like he's a self-made man and he's a dropout and comes from a poor family. And what was it like? Big and tall, like big fat clothing.
Big and fat, like tall and fat.
Well,
That's
they call it
the
plus size clothing now.
That's like that. We call these Melon Patch Kids. You see, the gimmick is, unlike Cabbage Patch Kids, those are adopted. These are abandoned.
Okay. This is okay. The cast is so fantastic in this film.
Yes,
because
stacked.
Well, you have Keith Gordon. This is probably one of his last movies as an actor. I do know this movie has an incredible lineage. Because, well, it's one of Keith Gordon's last movies, but he was also in another movie where he played a very quick role because he had started to become a director around this time. His first movie, I think, The Chocolate War, was coming out 2 years later, right?
Yep.
And but then he appeared in a movie called I Love Trouble, which I'm sure you've heard of, Nick Nolte and Julia Roberts.
Yeah, Nick Nolte, never seen it, but I know about it.
He has like a very small part in the role, a pivotal part too. And now what happened was Keith Gordon met Kurt Vonnegut on the set of this movie. And told him he was an enormous fan. I'm a big fan of Kurt Vonnegut, too. I would have flipped if I had ever met him. I can't believe Vonnegut even is in this movie. It's so left field. This comes out of nowhere. And he said, if I ever get the opportunity to make Mother Night as a movie, would you would you look at my screenplay and approve it or something? And he said, yeah, sure. Whatever. He's all about, fuck it. You want to try it? Go ahead. No one's ever been able to lick my books and make a movie out of it. Flash forward to I Love Trouble several years later. He's working with Nick Nolte, and he says, Nick, I wrote the screenplay for Mother Night. I'm thinking of directing it, and I've already have Vonnegut's blessing. So Nick Nolte's like, what? And he looks at the script, and he right there on the set of this movie agrees to be in the movie. So Keith Gordon made Mother Night with Nick Nolte a couple of years after that, and it all started from Back to School.
Wow.
How is that for an incredible story?
That's a great. I did not know that. That's a great story.
And Mother Night. Oh, I have to say, the movie's okay. The movie is really good. It's a movie that they don't really like find. He had to find all the money. He had to practically donate blood to get the budget for the movie just to make it because he's a filmmaker. Keith Gordon is a filmmaker. He's worked with Carpenter and De Palma. He knows all about that.
Yeah.
It's a good movie. It's not as good as the book though. I mean, the book is absolutely gut wrenching. I read this and I almost never wanted to write again after I read the book because I was like, if this is writing, I am not a writer. I nearly passed out in tears reading the book. Anyway, that's it's seriously one of the greatest American novels ever written.
And I will take your word for it.
And back to school.
Yeah, back to that.
You should really, if you get the time, read the book.
Yeah, I'll never have the time. I don't read. I only read articles. I haven't read a book in years, man. I haven't read a book. I haven't read books since college. How about that?
So it's like Jeff Goldblum in The Big Chill. He writes for People magazine. He says, never write anything longer than it takes for the average American to crap.
Yeah.
That's what he said in that.
Oh, what truth.
That's why they give you, when you look at articles online, they give you the time it takes to read it at the top. It's like 2 minutes.
2 minute read. It's like, great, I can squeeze one out while I read this real quick.
Yeah. It's like that. Well, this is a 5-minute read, unless you're taking a dump of the week or something.
Yeah, unless you're taking a good dump. Yeah. Oh, my God.
For me, that's where I do most of my reading, too. I have to, frankly, unfortunately. For all of you people out there who did not want to know this, that's where I do most of my reading. And
Hey, don't we all? Dude, I have a magazine rack in my bathroom. What can I say?
Yeah. What the fuck are they there for?
And that was from the previous owners. I didn't put it in there. That was from the previous owners of the house. They had a magazine rack in the bathroom.
We don't
My
have
grandfather,
one,
when he was
unfortunately.
still alive, had a magazine rack in the bathroom. Well, back to the. This was
Back to
Rodney.
school.
This was Rodney's third big starring role.
Right. You got Caddyshack, you got Easy Money, you got Back to School. And two
Now,
of these movies were made by Harold Ramis.
Two of them were also made by Orion. Actually, all three of them were
All
made
three
by
of them
Orion.
were made by Orion.
Made by
right.
Orion. Yes, I keep forgetting that Orion did do Caddyshack. Now,
I don't
here's
think
the
he
thing,
had
though.
some kind of an overall deal with them, though. He just happened to wind up there, I guess.
He just happened to wind up there. Harold Ramis actually wrote the screenplay for Back to School. He did not direct it, though.
Yeah, that was Alan Metter, who directed Girls Just Want to Have Fun.
And also Chuck Russell, who we talked about, who did the Blob remake and, The Mask. He was a producer on this movie.
Yeah, I guess he started off as a producer before he became a director, like Rob
Well, yeah,
Cohen
because remember, him and Darabont worked on Hell Night, and then they worked on Girls Just Want to Have Fun, like you said, and then they also worked on Back to School. Remember, Chuck Russell didn't do his first movie until '87, Dream Warriors. But then I keep forgetting he wrote the screenplay.
Warriors,
He wrote the screenplay
don't
for
wanna
Dreamscape.
dream no more. I got that. I always have that song in my head. We'll be doing Nightmare on Elm Street next, by the way, guys. But that's
Well,
it's such a catchy tune.
You heard me say Dreamscape. He also wrote the screenplay for Dreamscape.
Dreamscape. That was Dennis Quaid, right?
Dennis Quaid, Kate Capshaw.
You call him Dr. Jones, doll.
You call him Dr. Jones, doll.
Okay, now Harold Ramis was very, very popular after Ghostbusters, and my mother wrote him a fan letter, and he wrote back. He actually he replied to her on his letterhead stationery. It said Harold Ramis, Marina Del Rey, California, right? And he was like, "Thank you for the kind words." She asked him what he was up to, what his next projects were going to be, and he mentioned three. He mentioned, "I'm writing and directing a movie with Robin Williams called Club Paradise. I wrote a movie for Rodney Dangerfield called Back to School, and I'm working on a movie with my good friends Eugene Levy and John Candy called Armed and Dangerous." He sort of gave us a little fill-in on that. She's only ever gotten 2 letters from fans. Well, no, 3 technically. My mother was kind of a fan. She used to write fan letters, and people used to write fan letters to people. Nowadays, they don't. They just sort of go on Twitter now, right?
Case in point for what happened to me last night.
What?
You know how I got the 4K of Martin on, the other day?
Yeah, I saw your picture.
John Amplas liked it, and he commented.
That's, John Amplas, a great guy. We talked to him a couple of years ago for Froelich, and he's a guy you can actually approach. He's a guy you can reach out to, and he'll talk to you. And a lot of people don't know, probably because it's kind of like being an anonymous celebrity. People don't quite know who he is around this time period now. But with this new Blu-ray coming out, he's probably going to get a lot of people annoying him. Yeah, he's a really decent guy, and also, we interviewed him, we talked to him. I mean, it was like we talked to him.
Yeah,
we had him
on
the
show. He was a nice
show.
guy. Told some good stories about working with George Romero and Tony Bubba, Pasquale Bubba, Tom Savini. Just like everybody was on set. It was awesome. It was a great storyteller.
I want to. I would love to have that. The only version of Martin I have right now is just this really terrible VHS.
But you know what?
It's really old. It's a really old, terrible VHS.
It's because it's a Grindhouse print of that. That's what was taken from. It was a fucking Grindhouse print. That's why it looks so terrible.
I'm not
but
sure. I think it might be HBO.
It is, and I have the HBO Laserdisc, and both. Remember, HBO and the Laserdisc masters were the same around those days.
Yeah, I found it.
And the print was taken from a beat up Grindhouse 3rd or 4th generation 16 millimeter fucking print.
But I'll tell you where I found it, though. I found it at Kim's Video. Kim's Video had all of these rarities, and that movie was unavailable. At the time, we're talking the early 90s, that movie went on moratorium completely. It's another title that went moratorium, like Crime Wave and Shock Treatment, actually, ironically. I mentioned Shock Treatment to you. It's very hard to find these movies.
Martin at least got 2 different releases. Like, it got a, I remember the original release was a clamshell. I remember that because the Family Video had it. And then it got a second release through the Weintraub Home Video. Like, it was a subsidiary HBO Video, and it was in a slip box. I remember seeing that in a video store.
Weintraub had its own video company too?
Well, yeah, because I have some movies that say Weintraub Home Video, like it's HBO
Get out
Video.
Of here. They actually,
but it says,
they made a company? They had a company. It didn't last long, obviously, right?
Didn't last long, no, but it just said Weintraub
Weintraubs
Home
are very fly-by-night type producers.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I mean, it got back into print when Anchor Bay picked it up sometime in the latter 90s. But it was out of print, I'm going to say, for about 8 or 9 years. It was on moratorium.
Anchor Bay was great. They were one of the first actual boutique DVD distribution. But I have a ton of Anchor Bay DVDs downstairs.
But interestingly enough, Back to School was also released on HBO Video.
Oh, yeah. I get maybe they had,
which is really weird because it was like Orion was still
Orion never had they never had a video. Well,
they did because their home video label didn't come out until '87. They didn't start a home video label until 1987.
And then by then it was already too late because everything they were doing was,
the too late started in '88. That was like '88 was it. They were done in 1988.
Companies that started in the early 80s ended in the late 80s.
Yeah.
It's like,
Orion just never had any hits, man. Orion just never had any hits after after RoboCop. That was it, man.
Maybe they were a victim of that problem with Canon.
Well, I can't say that. I keep forgetting Dances with Wolves.
No, I mean their movies made money. It's just they had to take a longer time. They could not have a bigger release, and also I suspect that they were probably what's the word? Blacklisted or something like that, or shadow banned by the rest of the studios out there, and the other studios get to the other cinemas and tell them, don't run Orion films, don't run Canon films, don't run the big competition. I think that's what happened with Orion. Also, what's the other one? Vestron.
Oh well, Vestron. That was all money issue, though, with Vestron. Like, they had that one big hit with Dirty Dancing, but then they couldn't get into a shitload of theaters because, like, they didn't know. And they were a home video company, man. They didn't know anything about theatrical production. Right. They should have hired somebody good that knew what the fuck they were doing, but they didn't hire anybody.
Now, this movie was a big hit, though.
Yes, it was a huge hit.
It made $90 million on a $10 million budget, which is very, very good for a movie of this type. And it was all just, Rodney Dangerfield is like one of these guys. People just flock to see him, and I suspect they flock to see this movie because of Rodney Dangerfield. But you do have an incredible cast, though.
But then you look at some of the other stuff he did after this. Like, I guess the big movie would be Ladybugs, and that movie landed.
Let's face it, I got a lot of balls.
That movie thudded. That movie was a thud. I liked the movie, don't get me wrong, but it was a thud.
You have in this movie Sally Kellerman, of course. You got Burt Young. Who's Paulie. Happy birthday, Paulie. Happy birthday, Paulie. We have Robert Downey Jr. playing one of the last of this kind of role that he would play. After this movie, he transitioned into a leading man with the movie The Pickup Artist, remember?
And Less Than Zero.
Less Than Zero was more of an ensemble, though. Pickup Artist was actually about him and Molly Ringwald. Mostly Molly Ringwald. I guess she's the star, isn't she?
I guess. I never saw Pickup Artist.
It's a good movie. Ooh, you got to watch it. We watched it a couple of weeks ago.
Well, then we also got to say, two of the lesser knowns in this, because we go back to this. Billy Zabka's in this movie.
William Zabka playing a bully, but not the same
Not quite.
bully.
Not quite. Never played the same bully 3 times.
He's Terry Farrell's boyfriend, right? And he is like a preppy bully. He's like tall and imposing, and he's very, he doesn't beat you up. He sort of beats you up with his, like... He's like one of those Animal House or Caddyshack villains,
Yeah, one of them hoity-toity villains.
He's a snob. This is a slob versus snob movie. It's the genre that Harold Ramis perfected. Harold Ramis and Ivan Reitman and John Landis and people like that, they all perfected this new slob versus snob kind of humor.
Well, then you got the other things in this movie I like. Let's see. So here's the 1-2 punch. One of Danny Elfman's first musical scores.
Well, yeah, it's a Danny Elfman score. Plus, it's the end of his band Oingo Boingo because they
are in it. I love that.
They're in the band, and I was like, because my wife is a huge Oingo Boingo fan. I've told you she's an '80s nut, right? And she's like, "Oh, that's an Oingo Boingo song." And then we see Oingo Boingo performing at the club, and they're like, "Oh, that's Danny Elfman! Look, there he is, Mr. Ginger, right there, Mr. Bridget Fonda."
Yep, and I can't say one of his first. I forgot. Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Pee-wee's Big Adventure,
first score, but then he got Back to School based off of that.
And that, okay, it's funny. I have a tape of a compilation of Danny Elfman's scores. His themes. So it's got like all this stuff. It's got Edward Scissorhands, Batman Returns. It's got this movie called Hot to Trot that his brother made, and it also has Back to School. Just apropos of nothing, because it's not Back to School isn't really like a Danny Elfman sounding score. It's a different sounding score. Than the kind of stuff he usually does.
It's more traditional, one would say, I guess.
Yeah. At that point, you know, he was doing, of course, he did Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and then he does Back to School. It's a different score. And then that's pretty much the end of Oingo Boingo right there.
I think they did come out with one more album. They did come out with one or two more albums. But Dead Man's Party was like, it's a cult record. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it had some hits. You know, you had the Weird Science song, obviously. No One Lives Forever, Stay. Obviously, Dead Man's Party is a fucking jam and a half.
That song from Summer School. There's a Oingo Boingo song on the Summer School soundtrack too. It's awesome.
Yeah, so, I mean, it wasn't the quote unquote end of Oingo Boingo, but then
you didn't really hear from them anymore. It was mostly
they put out some more albums. They did, but they were not
probably
successful.
did that because they were under contract.
MCA put them out. That's all I know. They were on MCA label back in the 80s. They put out one or two or three albums, and Danny Elfman just said, "Fuck it, I'm scoring music now. Fuck it, I'll do that." My other favorite thing, Sam Kinison is in this movie. Sam Kinison, one of the best parts in the movie. Fucking love him.
There's some interesting trivia here that the producers originally wanted Jim Carrey to play that role, but he was rejected because he was deemed too young for the part.
Well, yeah, he would.
Yeah, I can't really see Jim Carrey because Jim Carrey was a kid. I mean, he was just. He
would have been 24 around, like 23, probably around the time of filming.
He would have been a student. He would have been a passable student in the movie.
Right. So that movie, that made no sense. I'm glad they got Kinison for that.
Kinison,
trying to think.
When he died, I was really surprised when he died.
See, he wasn't one of the guys. I didn't know about him until later on because, you know, I wasn't paying attention to stand-up comedians in the 90s.
I already saw him, and when he showed up, I remember this in the movie theater. I actually remember seeing this in the movie theater, right? When he shows up as the professor, everybody started applauding immediately. They knew who he was because back then he was on HBO stand-up comedy shows all the time. So he was all those comedians you saw in the 90s that had their own TV shows and shit were on those stand-up shows on HBO in the 80s. You know, like Seinfeld and Ray Romano and Mark Maron and Louis C.K. and what's her name? Brett Butler, you know, people like that.
Well, I also think the reason that Kinison did this maybe because Rodney knew who he was because Rodney was still running his
Rodney
club at the
actually
time.
Rodney Dangerfield had a show. He was the one who was the presenter on the Young Comedians annual show on HBO. Sam Kinison had debuted on that show. So yeah, he had his hand in the of all the stand-up comedians, and they did as he was like their guru.
And like he also said, Adrienne Barbeau and Robert Picardo,
making out for 5 minutes in the kitchen.
I love the beginning of that movie. That's so funny.
And he's got a toupee on, obviously.
Oh yeah. And then of course he goes on he has that same toupee in Inner Space 1 year later when he plays the cowboy.
That is probably, other than his television work, that is probably the thing he'll be remembered for with the cowboy hat.
Yes,
and also, lest we forget, he was the werewolf. He was Eddie in The Howling. You know,
long story short, one of Joe Dante's featured players.
Yes, he's in like all of these.
Everything. He's in, almost like he's not in Gremlins. You don't ever see him in Gremlins. He is in Explorers.
He's in The Burbs. He's in Matinee. He's
not in Explorers.
He's in Inner Space. I think Inner Space might have been the first one then. Inner Space.
No. Well, The Howling was the first.
Well, yeah, that too. Howling, no, I'm thinking about later on when he had like everybody, like Wendy Schaal and Dick Miller and people like Kevin McCarthy. You know, because
you got to remember Gremlins. Okay, Gremlins. All he got was Dick Miller, but Dick Miller actually had like what one would consider a real role. You know what I mean? And then Explorers came out, and that's when he started working with Robert Picardo again. But I think it was Inner Space because then he started working with Kevin McCarthy. Kevin McCarthy started popping up and everything after that.
Picardo is an insanely good actor who never gets the credit. He is like one of these guys like Laurie Metcalf or Christine Baranski. Or
John Delancey, even John Delancey for that matter.
He pops up in everything because he's a character actor. And he knows that he'll get a part if he's asked. And the thing is, if he's something strikes me, the fact that these people continue to work shows me that they have a respect for not only the process but for the crew. They don't act like monsters, and I think they go in there and they get this work, and that's what an actor should strive for. Most actors, people who get into acting, so especially in the 90s, they all wanted to be the next Tom Cruise because he was making $15 million a picture at that point. You know, that's all it was about to them.
But then they should also realize it's like, dude, one day you'll catch a big break, but until then, just whatever role you can take it.
Yeah,
you know, it's
exactly.
Money.
A lot of people think it's beneath them.
Don't take anything like don't be like Jan Michael Vincent. Okay, don't be like the biggest up and coming star and then piss it all away. Don't be Jan Michael Vincent.
every time I talk to actors, I'm like, try to become a reliable character actor, and you'll always get work. Do not become a prima donna and think that you're going to be the next Tom Cruise. The fact is, you're probably not going to be the next Tom Cruise. I hope they take my advice. I really do.
Well, it's good advice. I mean, it's just, hey, become a character actor, take a couple jobs, make your money. You got your SAG card, and eventually, those could work out to bigger things, or you're just going to be a fucking hired gun for the rest of your days. Either way, you're still working. Yeah. You're still making money. There's nothing wrong with it.
Do you know how rare it is to get a paying acting gig? I mean, that is very rare. Especially in these days, it's strange. So,
I mean, look at Picardo. He got lucky. He was on Next Gen forever.
Well, Voyager.
Voyager. Okay, he was on Voyager forever.
And he had a bit of a reunion there, too. He did one episode with Zach Galligan, and he did another episode with Wendy Shaw. So he had a couple of reunions.
Then it was only a bit. I forgot. It was only a bit part in The Burbs. He played the garbage man with Dick Miller.
At the end, that's because Dante forgot to hire him. He was like, "Shit, I need Picardo. Picardo must be his like good luck charm or something." So he's like, "Okay, we'll put him in as a garbage man."
Little creep show thing there, kind of like what they did there. How Tom Savini was a garbage man in Creep Show.
Yeah. It's a comic book. It's a comic book.
It's a comic book. But man, Back to School. This movie is such a trip.
Voodoo doll.
You cannot find. I can't find a single person who hates this movie. Can you?
No, I love the movie. It's all about. It winds up being all about Rodney, though. You think you're going to be dealing with some kind of maybe a heartfelt thing with his son or something.
But you see, they do give good time to his son, though. You see,
a little bit, he seems to be like a showboat. So Keith Gordon's always rolling his eyes. It's like, my dad, Jesus, he's embarrassing him all the time. He completely converts. He turns his dorm into like this condo. He puts a hot tub in there.
I mean, okay, dude, 80s. Like you gotta always.
It is very 80s. Yes.
80s. Okay.
I mean, look at Terry Farrell's hair. My God, it is 80s.
Oh God, that's a perm. That's a perm and a half. That's Franken perm right there, man.
She was really cute. She's also ridiculously tall, and she's much taller than Keith Gordon. So Shorty's giving it up. At least he gets props for dating for stealing a tall girl from her tall boyfriend.
Gotta love it.
Yeah,
gotta love it.
I love how she has to look down at him. They didn't even bother putting him on an apple box or anything.
That's terrible.
Like
but
Tom
it's still
cruising
funny,
him up
though.
with everybody else.
It was one of the movies. It's
apparently
it's
all about swimming, right? Because
that's the backdrop is that you find out that Thornton was a professional diver who used to dive off Jersey Pier, and he taught all that stuff to his son, and then he ends up saving the day at the end of the movie.
And all of this
by doing the triple Lindy.
Yeah, the triple Lindy. All of this is ostensibly to kind of get to know his son a little better.
Pretty much, yeah.
Oh, and also he winds up banging the teacher there, Sally Kellerman, and
I mean I totally would have back in those days.
Keith Gordon gets the I love her voice. She's very sexy. It's weird. It's like inappropriately sexy because she seems older than she should be. But okay, basically, he is an extension of Al Cervic from Caddyshack.
A little bit.
He's new money. He's new money. These people are snobs, of course. This is sort of like Caddyshack 2.5, sort of. Even though Caddyshack 2 would come out and really be terrible, from what I understand. I watched 5 seconds of it. I couldn't do it.
It's not as bad as most people. It's bad, but it's not unwatchable. Caddyshack 2 is not terrible. Like, I actually kind of like the movie.
They even, what's weird about Caddyshack 2? It's like considered one of the worst movies ever. They even got Kenny Loggins back to do another song, and it wound up being a fucking hit. Yes, I mean, Kenny Loggins shits pop song hits.
But it's nowhere near as good as I'm All Right.
Or
I mean, yes, that whole 5-minute opening scene with Jonathan Silverman running across to get a fucking diet root beer for that Buffy bitch. Yeah, that was stupid.
Yeah.
But, okay, Dan Aykroyd is actually pretty funny in the movie. Robert Stack plays it straight the whole way, but everyone else is funny around him. The big argument that they have is Jackie Mason.
Yeah, Jackie Mason.
Like, Jackie Mason is literally just doing Rodney.
Yes.
But more Jewish, like way more fucking Jewish.
Caddyshack 2 is so... I mean, I have a feeling that... I guess Dan Aykroyd was doing Harold Ramis a favor by appearing in the movie.
I would say so. I mean, Harold Ramis did get that screenplay credit on it, and then Alan Arkush, of course, who did Rock and Roll High School, he directed that one.
And Get Crazy and Heartbeats, too, by the way. Heartbeats...
Fucking...
Wait, let me just say something about Heartbeats. I know how you feel about it.
Ugh.
It's not a great movie, but it is gorgeously shot. The photography of that, I saw a high definition transfer of it recently, and it was gorgeous to look at.
I'll take your word
It really
for
was.
it.
I know it's Andy Kaufman, and I'm not a big fan of Andy Kaufman myself. Alan Arkush is one of these unfortunate guys who just never seemed to catch on.
But he did a lot of TV, though. Alan Arkush did a ton of TV.
He did, but he always. It seems like a lot of these movies were like this, like Get Crazy. When I heard the story of Get Crazy, basically they were gambling on it flopping so they could get all their money back. It was like the producers, Mel Brooks. It was like a scam, and he had no idea because he was just trying to make a fucking movie, you know. He almost had he wanted Tom Cruise, sorry. He wanted Tom Hanks for the role that Daniel Stern would eventually play. Daniel Stern is a fine character actor, like we talk about, right? He's not a movie star. This is the movie that if they had gotten Tom Hanks, I have a feeling the movie would have been huge. But that's just...
Well, Tom Hanks even couldn't escape some flops back then. I mean, Man with One Red Shoe didn't do all that well.
Well, I suppose that's... But you have to remember, he took Bachelor Party and turned that into a hit. And then there was Splash right after that. So
right, because it's the point is, it's like he had those when he was doing them comedies. Everything up in the '80s, he was doing pretty much nothing but comedies until the '90s. Okay, he never did serious roles.
What, The Burbs, and then Joe versus Volcano, and then
Joe versus Volcano, Turner and Hooch, Big, freaking Bonfire of the Vanities. It was all comedies.
But he threw in a couple of dramas like Nothing in Common, and there was this other one. There was other movie that Tom Hanks made. The other drama, what was it? He was a soldier. He did a movie where he was a soldier.
I know I'm not going to say Forrest Gump, but I don't know what
no,
you're
it's
talking
not
about.
Forrest Gump, because this is way before Forrest Gump. Godfather, I'm going to have to look her up. It was not that. It was not that. It was not that. It was Every Time We Say Goodbye. Same year as Nothing in Common.
Never seen nor heard of that movie.
He only made one comedy that year, which was The Money Pit, which is a movie that always has me laughing my ass off anyway. But this was like right at the beginning of his career. But his first movie, you have to remember, was in a slasher film, but he was never going to be that slasher guy.
Oh yeah, it was a bit part in He Knows You're Alone, and it was a very bit part. Like he gets killed off right away.
Right, and he started though in television. I saw him on an episode of The Love Boat, for fuck's sake, in the '70s, and he was in this episode of The Love Boat.
Well, because he was also, he was doing TV, Bosom Buddies and everything like that. And I was going to say the other thing I was going to drop, Mazes and Monsters.
Mazes and Monsters.
He did that.
That isn't even on his list. That isn't even on the list. It's amazing.
Yeah, well, like I said, I was going back to like the '80s comedies. So it's like you said, you had Splash, you had Bachelor Party, but then for those two great movies, you had The Man with One Red Shoe. Nobody fucking talks about that. Nobody does.
I have it on DVD. It isn't opened, but we'll probably crack it open and watch it at some point. Because I remember loving that movie, if not for the scene with Carrie Fisher in the bikini.
See, now you're making me kind of want to watch this movie. I've never seen it.
It's okay. You know what? It's a dumb. It's based on a French movie, The Tall Blonde Man with one black shoe or something like that, right?
Okay.
They remade it as The Man with One Red Shoe. He's best friends with Jim Belushi and Carrie Fisher are married, but he's having an affair with Carrie Fisher on the side. He's a musician. It's a kind of a stupid, but he, Hanks livens it up. He's very charming and everything. And it's directed by Stan Gigotti, who directed Mr. Mom.
And Love at First Bite.
Love at First Bite, and also that other one, the one with Meg Ryan and Tim Robbins about...
I forgot about one of the worst movies ever made, that Tony Danza flick.
She's Out of Control, which was a huge hit, actually. It was a sleeper hit with a lot of girls. They loved that movie. I had a couple of girlfriends who love that movie. They watch it all the time. And he also, what was that movie? IQ. The one about Albert Einstein plays matchmaker to Meg Ryan and Tim Robbins. It's kind of a cute movie.
Stan Gotti's had a pretty mixed bag filmography, one could argue.
But he knows how to direct comedy. And there is some funny shit in The Man with One Red Shoe. Laurie Singer plays this woman who's in the CIA. And Dabney Coleman is in it too. I mean, for Christ's sake. Anything with Dabney Coleman is awesome, right? Mm-hmm. He's another guy. Oh my God. You know what, Froelich? I have an idea. I've had this idea for a million years, but I've never figured out how to implement it. We should do an episode about all the lost stars of the 80s. We should do an episode about Dabney Coleman, Steve Guttenberg, Judge Reinhold, and
I got a ton of
any actors that you can imagine who had this incredible career in the 80s who just vanished by the 90s.
If we do Dabney Coleman, fine, I'll do this. I'll do Man with One Red Shoe. But we got to raise it up with Cloak and Dagger.
Cloak and Dagger, I have not seen in a long time, but I like the movie. It's a different one because he's not quite playing the asshole that he usually plays, Right. Dabney Coleman is an asshole, and he's really good at playing one.
Yes, he is.
He is like the quintessential asshole. He's like up there with William Atherton and Paul Gleason as the assholes of the 80s,
But he plays a good. I love the part he plays. Oh, another movie. Oh, fucking Meet the Applegates. Another great movie he was in.
That is like one of the last ones, right? From that time.
But he did Beverly Hillbillies.
He did. He was. Who was
and he played Mr. Drysdale.
Mr. Drysdale, right? That's right. He was. I remember that. But he was already. I mean, like he was like a supporting character. He did
and of course, the movie that got him famous. We forgot. 9 to 5.
9 to 5.
9 to 5. Like, we're talking about all this after shit, and it was like 9 to 5 was the movie that made his career.
Just one more thing, because I know we're getting way off tangent.
Yeah, I know.
9 to 5. In 9 to 5, Dabney Coleman plays the boss of Jane Fonda, right?
Yep.
In the next year, he was in On Golden Pond playing Jane Fonda's fiance.
Oh wow!
Isn't that weird? How about that
so
range,
weird.
huh? Wouldn't they say, "Oh, Dabney Coleman, he's an asshole. Why do you want him playing Jane Fonda's fiance?" Well, because he's a good actor.
Well, there you go.
But he was in Tootsie, War Games, all of these movies, and he was an asshole. Young Doctors in Love, he's got a really great part in that too.
I like that movie. I mean, I like it. Don't get me wrong. I like Young Doctors in Love. I just don't think it's great.
I had to review it because it was part of my vintage cable box, and it was on my schedule the week that Gary Marshall died. So I had to rush the review and watch the movie. I really like that. It has like a special place in my heart because it was like one of those first movies I discovered on cable TV.
Yeah, I get that.
And it's got a great cast. I mean, you've got, of course, Hector Elizondo. You've got Sean Young looking gorgeous. You've got Michael McKean. There's this scene where she's dying of a rare disease, and Michael McKean's walking down the street, and the credits start rolling, and he says, "No, not yet." And then the credits disappear. So you think the movie's going to end there. It's a great bit. Anyway, okay, let's finish up with Back to School, for crying in the beer. Going on for 20 minutes about 80s movies.
Yeah, I know.
But it's fun. It's fun having these conversations anyway. That's really what it's about, kids.
Yeah, that's all it's about. It's like we talk about the movie, but then we talk about other bullshit. That's how it goes.
We're going to go on forever.
Yeah, I know.
So the movie ends. Everybody's happy. The end.
Pretty much. I mean, it's a very cut and paste type of movie.
It's an 80s movie. It's a classic 80s movie.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's a classic 80s movie.
Wait,
no
we have to
ifs,
talk a
ands, or
little
buts.
bit about Zabka, though.
I mean,
he's a dick, but he's a different kind of bully because he's a dick more than he is like the guy from Just One of the Guys lifting up people's tables to fuck with their food. You know, he's not.
Yeah,
like,
well, that and a guy 1 foot shorter than him landed a good punch.
Where did he get him? Did he punch him in the nuts?
Oh, he punched him in the jaw. He was just like, he's like, "Will you cut the shit?" And then he's like, "Okay," and then wham, just like fucking sucker punches him in the face.
Kind of reminds me of when I don't know, Kirk Cameron punched that guy in Like Father Like Son, and then we hear Wild Side from Motley Crue.
Yeah,
it's really cool. That was a cool 80s moment. I love that one too.
Yeah, we don't talk about Like Father Like Son. We don't talk about Kirk Cameron. Fuck that guy.
Why? Because he's a born again Christian?
Because he found God. And
he found Jesus.
He's crazy. He is fucking crazy.
Willie Ames found Jesus too. Remember, he's Bible man.
Oh,
actually, Kirk
God.
Cameron, I have a lot of respect for him because he did a lot of drugs. He cleaned himself up. He got married to a girl who was on Growing Pains back in the day, right?
Yep.
And they're like this super Christian couple, and they make movies. They make Christian movies. It's not my shit. I'm not into that, but I respect other people's faith, and I like that.
I mean, I guess you could say that. I just
he
think
cleaned himself up, Froelich. You know, a lot of people don't do that.
Okay, fine.
They get
yes,
worse.
he cleaned himself up, but I still think he's fucking crazy.
Okay. Mm.
Okay, he's a little too religious. He's a little too religious. He's a little too.
Thank you, Bomar.
He's just so in your fucking face about it.
Well,
and
I mean,
that's
you
what
don't.
I don't
mean,
like about it.
Like with anything,
dude,
you don't have to watch the movies.
I have no problem with other people's faith, other people's opinions. You want to worship whatever God you want, that's fine. But do me a favor. Don't shove it down my fucking throat and tell me I'm going to hell if I don't do what you say.
That's fair enough, but I will point out he does have an audience. People like his movies.
And they're all and you don't want to know what they're all crazy too.
They're all crazy too. Okay.
They're all crazy too. They're all them crazy religious nuts that them fucking Old Testament, old world God hates the gay. You see, that's why I don't like him. Oh, God hates the gays. My whole opinion is if you're homosexual, you're possessed by a demon. His words. Sir, his words. If you're homosexual, you're possessed by a demon.
It's up for interpretation. It's just when you get to be my age, young man, you'll understand that we live and let live. We can't live with hate in our hearts.
And his
I know he probably has
somewhat crazy too. His sister,
Candace Cameron
crazy.
Bure. I've heard a little bit about her.
She's on the whole same. She doesn't like working with the gays and everything like that.
The thing is, wisdom works both ways. He'll find wisdom, you'll find wisdom, I'll find wisdom. We'll all find it eventually. I think I'm the wisest of us three, though.
No, they don't need to find wisdom. They need to find tolerance.
Tolerance.
Yeah, they need to find tolerance. Not South Park level tolerance, but they need to find, like, traditional tolerance. Like, dude, who gives a shit if you're gay or straight? Let live, man. Don't criticize someone else's sexuality. Because God says it's okay.
All right, Froelich. Get off your lectern. Okay.
Sorry, I hate talking about Kirk Cameron. Fuck Like Father, Like Son. I can't watch that movie anymore.
It's just
speaking of character actors that you like, I would rather watch Vice Versa. That's the better. I
like
movie.
all those body swap movies, and I also like Father, Like Son because I just find it hard to believe that Dudley Moore could be Kirk Cameron's father since they look nothing alike. But I like those movies because they're chaotic and weird. Has nothing to do with you have to separate the work from the artist. Okay.
I know.
Remember Polanski and people like that. You have to separate the work from the artist.
But traditionally, in my case, I would rather watch Vibes, or I would rather watch Vibes.
Cindy Lauper.
Cindy Lauper and Jeff Goldblum. Fuck yeah, that movie's a train wreck. It's great.
It's a train wreck. God,
that movie's a train wreck, but it's fucking great.
That guy, that movie got that Columbia guy fired. David Putnam.
Yeah, David Putnam. But then Ishtar had something to do with that too.
There was
like Ishtar flopped hard too. But then anyway, like I said, Vice Versa. That's another movie. That's my favorite.
There's another one, 18 Again. There's also
18 Again's a better movie than like.
Aren't these basically Freaky Friday variations, right?
Yeah, all of it's a Freaky Friday variation.
Then they made a Freaky Friday with Jamie Lee Curtis and Lindsay Lohan, right?
That's a good movie. I like that movie.
That was good. Yeah.
And it has Mark Harmon in it too, so it's extra points because it has Jethro.
He's everywhere.
Yeah,
he's everywhere. He was on NCIS. Okay, so.
But anyway, so like we said, quintessential 80. Like we said, essential. I say quintessential 80s movie. Back to School should be on everyone's. If you're gonna have an 80s weekend, you gotta watch that movie. You have to.
It's interesting to me that you could just go ahead and make this movie and release it. You know, it seemed like you were able to do that. Nowadays, it doesn't seem like that. It's also original. It's also completely original, like the next movie we're going to talk about. These are original movies. There's a lot less originality. There's a really good video you should look at on YouTube from, I think it's Just an Observation. It's the name of the channel. And he does this thing about the quality of movies, why people think that the quality of movies has gone down in recent years. And he does this whole, it's almost like a thesis. It's a really nice, and it's 20 minutes long. It's not that long. So I mean,
but it also shows that Hollywood's been running out of ideas for years.
Well, they run out of ideas, but they throw a lot of money at shit. And the thing is, the movies that we're talking about today are movies that are made for $10 million. And what's more, they became profitable as a result of it, and also because they sort of they latch onto a moment, and they become popular as a result.
Yeah. It's what happened to Back to School. It's what happened to My Cousin Vinny.